Hello, everybody. This is the Enlightened Misanthrope, and this is episode number 7. I don't know if I'm ever going to stop saying what episode it is. Probably when I get, at a certain point, I'm just going to be like, this is my new episode, or I honestly don't know. This thing is evolving consistently. So if you're looking for some kind of, general plan, I really don't have one. Like I said, it came together. I've said this in other episodes. It came together kind of quickly, and has, little to no structure, if any at all. So before I'm going to start this way, I did this a couple podcasts ago. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, email. You can find me on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, all kinds of places. My Twitter following went up from like 19 to 40 something, thanks to a lot of Arabic followers. I don't know if I really have a lot of Arabic following, but if I do, thank you. I appreciate it. I am very much the ignorant American, though. I don't know how to read Arabic. I have no contact with anybody who has any knowledge of Arabic. So I appreciate Google Translate. Thank you for that. And I appreciate the follows. I hope you're listening. If you are, that's good. It might be a little bit of a communication barrier sometimes because, like, I read the tweets, and they are the syntax as far as American English isn't very good. I know it's because it's translate. Like if you knew English and you tried to speak it, and you were translating that Arabic writing to me, you could, kind of based on some understanding of English, be able to tell me something that the Google Translate's just like, no, this is what that word means. Because I used to do that. I took French for a while in college, and that was very similar. Like I'd learn the words. I'd cheat on my projects with using Google Translate, and then it would look stupid, and I'd be like, I can't even use this. Fuck. I think maybe that's why they do it that way. I honestly don't know. But I appreciate the follows. So, and like I said, you can get a hold of me any kind of way you want, pretty much. I'm not real active all the time. I don't have time for all that stuff. It's almost winter time here, and again, you're going to hear my furnace kick in a couple of times probably during the podcast. We had a little bit of snow last night, and it's cold. It's cold out there. So if we get any precipitation today, it's been raining constantly. So if we get any precipitation today, it's probably going to be snow again. So my furnace just kicked in. The fan will be kicking on in a few minutes. So I apologize for that. And if you hear any barking, that is the dogs that I have outside. So they're currently tied up because they're misbehaving today. I got an idea for a subject from my cousin who said, well, if you're doing this, you should talk about, like, because I talk so much about sports, I should talk about sports personalities I like, and so on and so forth. And I kind of started thinking about it, and I spent a lot of time watching ESPN as a kid. Even currently, up to, say, 4 years ago or so, I was pretty much like, I used to watch PTI, I used to watch Around the Horn, I used to watch First Take, I used to watch Highly Questionable, I used to watch, Sports Reporters on Sunday, I used to watch Baseball Tonight, I used to watch a lot of stuff. I used to watch SVP and Rosillo. I used to listen/watch Colin Cowherd, because those two are radio shows. And I currently still, out of all of those, the only one those are all past, and the only current thing I probably watch on ESPN with any regularity is the Dan Lebatard Show on ESPN. Now, many of you are probably going to criticize me because it's a radio show that's simulcast on TV, but now that they're on TV, they're doing bits that they even admit themselves only work on television. They don't work on the radio. And their podcasts, their television show, okay, this really bothers me. Now, not in the sense that, I'm going to do anything about it, but it bothers me in the fact that their podcast exists on the internet for an hour and 30 minutes. And that's even with a few shitty podcast commercials thrown in. Their friggin' radio show on the actual television is 3 hours long. So you get an hour say an hour and a half. I think it was an hour and a half before they started doing the commercials, and it might be an hour and 40 minutes now in total, counting the local hour. It's close to 2 hours, but they do so many commercials on the local hour now, and they have to play basically two shows, one show of commercials and another show of the actual show, and it's unbelievably sad. I mean, it's unbelievably sad to me that I could listen to their podcast, but then they do stuff that's only television relevant, and there's some things, if you watch the television show, you don't see on the you don't hear, you don't get the context because they do facial expressions and stuff, and there'll be times where they're like, dude, this is largely a non-visual medium. What are you doing? But I used to, when I watched it when it was first on Fusion. I was lucky enough that my mother had a big enough package at that time for dish TV that we could get Fusion. And I had always liked Dan Lebatard. He'd pop up on PTI every once in a while, and he'd pop up here or there on ESPN. And I always thought his takes were nuanced, they were very well thought out, and they were different than everybody else. And I like different. I always like different because you can have the same talking heads over and over and over again, but eventually I don't want to listen to them anymore. That's why I liked SVP and Russillo, because they did different things. If you're a little bit different, like Colin Cowherd, I only watched for a little while and listened to for a little while because he's just so pedantic. I mean, it's just boring. He just blah, 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 says stuff. He doesn't even believe. And if he does believe that stuff, some of the stuff he says is just stupid. Like, just some of his takes are just terrible. I thought the best comeuppance of that was when Baker Mayfield went on his show after he talked crap about Baker Mayfield and just kind of shoved it up his butt. I thought that was great because, you're going to talk a bunch of junk about these guys, and if they're going to come back at you and you can't handle it because you just said a bunch of shit because you had the opportunity, you didn't think about it at all. You just went out there and I got this opinion, I'm just going to say this. And you didn't think about it at all because then, I don't like Baker. I don't remember exactly what he said, something about Baker Mayfield not being a leader or something like that. And the kid, he's individualistic, but it doesn't not make him a leader. I mean, he's a quarterback. His team respects his individualism and I was reading this thing by Robert Klemko, who is with I think it's still the Monday Morning Quarterback on Sports Illustrated, and I read a little bit of his article, not the whole thing, but they were talking about how Baker Mayfield got in the face of some guy and was like, yeah, come on, let's go. And there was a guy who, I don't remember who it was, I think it was a lineman, that said, when you got a quarterback as a dog like that, you respect that. So there's some of that shit that he did where his teammates respect it because it's like, you're the quarterback and you're like the first out, you're not sitting in the back letting everybody else go through the battle, and you're just kind of like, yeah, come on, boys, let's go. You're the guy first out the fucking door. And Colin didn't think about any of that, and he said some shit, and so but that's getting way off point. The point being is that I didn't watch that show very much, but I like different things. And Dan Lebatard's radio show, I was really excited to see it. I was really excited because I don't live in Miami. I'm not anywhere close to Miami. I'm in Wisconsin, so he's in Milwaukee, but he ain't never going to come up here. I mean, it's just not going to happen, is my guess. And his show I was really excited to see. And then they had it initially in the TV studio before they moved to the radio studio. And I liked the TV studio because on television it worked better. And, it was more laid out. It was better to see. They had more freedom of movement too, like, Stugatz would take his headset off and run away or something, or, they had the fish thing that came from the ceiling and stuff. And it was just different, and it was funny, and it was interesting, and they had seemingly new material all the time. They didn't really, stick with one bit for too long, and I really appreciated it. And then the beginning of the decline, as far as I'm concerned, and yes, I do think they're in decline, and fairly recently they're in rapid decline. It started slow, and now it's in rapid decline. They moved from the TV studio into this little closet radio studio thing, and there's barely enough room for four people in there, and it looks cramped. It's not pleasant to look at on television. Dan's often very sweaty and he looks, uncomfortable, and it's not as good to look at aesthetically. It's not pleasing. And they tried to make it, flashy and whatever, because they had his brother do a bunch. His brother's an artist. They had his brother do a bunch of art on the walls and all this other stuff. And I don't know. I didn't like it as much. And but the content was okay. And that's really all I care about. Okay, if it doesn't look the best, that's fine. But the content is good. As long as that's good, I'm still with you. Because SVP and Rosillo were in like one of the most mundane studios you've ever seen, but they had good content, and I watched them pretty much every day. And their content has progressively gone downhill, because they used to be new and edgy and all this other stuff, and now basically the best way I can describe it is they find something funny, because they're always searching for the humor. But they find something funny, and then they grind it into your face until at a certain point you're just like, hey, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I kind of had, I had examples of it, but I don't really think that they're really apropos. Like my one example was going to be, they use like when the guy beats the guy in the movie with the baseball bat, and then eventually somebody's got to pull him off because there's nothing but ground there, because he's beaten the skull and everything apart. That's what they do with their bits, and it's fairly graphic, but that's what they do with their bits. I mean, they run them into the ground, and they're just like, and you think, are you guys still doing this? And they never used to do that before. Maybe. And I thought about this the other day too, because I was thinking about the topic, and then I was really upset. I'm upset because they had the local hour, and they promoted the local hour on the podcast for a long time. And Dan would say, hey, you got to go listen to the local hour because we talked about this in the local hour or whatever. And we suggest you listen to the local hour because it leads into the show. Well, now what happened, I think that was the end of last year. They signed a fairly large extension, or the beginning of this year. I don't remember. But anyway, very recently they signed a large extension with ESPN. And ever since they've signed the extension, they're pretty much coasting. I mean, that's how I feel. Stugatz doesn't contribute a whole hell of a lot anymore, either by design or by happenstance. He's got this new segment, which is Stugatz on TV, where he just draws a face on his stomach and then says stuff, and they shoved French fries up its mouth, supposedly poured water down. I mean, that's not funny. I didn't find it humorous. I didn't think it was interesting. They think it's funny, but I think it's just childish and stupid. And they have this thing on the show where they play this sounder that's, you don't get the show. Well, I've watched the show since you've been on TV. I haven't been with you since the beginning because I don't live in Miami, but I've been along for the ride for quite a while. And I've listened to the podcast, and I listen to the local hour, and I do all of these things. And the local hour now is basically just what is considered the frightened refugees, the container of frightened refugees, which is Mike Ryan, Roy Bellamy, Billy Gill or Guillermo, whichever one, and Greg Cody's son, Chris Cody. And Greg Cody is a Miami Herald writer who is a mentor kind of thing to Dan Lebatard, and he comes on Tuesdays. And those are one of my favorite days because there's actually more sports contents on those days because they have Greg there, and Greg's really not prepared to talk about anything except sports. So if they don't talk about sports, he doesn't say anything, and then what are they paying him to be there for? So they actually have to try to talk about sports on those days. But the local hour is... They're mostly do nonsense, and that was fine, but you had to mix in sports, and they don't mix in as much sports anymore. They barely talk about sports. They talk about societal issues, and they talk about this, and they talk about that. Very occasionally do they talk about sports. Like, they had Stan Van Gundy on. Now they're having Stan Van Gundy on every Wednesday because of him being off of... He got fired from the Detroit Pistons, and they used to have him on apparently years ago, and every Wednesday during the basketball season they're going to have Stan Van Gundy on, and that's great because they actually have to talk about basketball. They actually have to talk about sports because Stan, he's there for some of their hijinks, but, you got to keep the guy engaged, and if you just keep doing nonsense, he's not going to be engaged. So they have to talk about sports. And I got to get to the local hour. So the local hour, what happens is that they usually always talked about sports. They talked about Miami this, Miami that, whatever. But it was Miami. At least it was sports, And I like the U. They talked about the U a lot. Dan went to the U. They talk about the Dolphins, which I don't really care about the Dolphins. They do this week because they're playing the Packers, but other than that, I don't really care. They talk about like the Miami Marlins, and that'll be a different discussion for later on. And they talk about the Heat, and I like the Heat still, not as much as when LeBron was there, but I always kind of still pay attention. You know, when players I like leave certain places, I still kind of pay attention to see what happens after they're gone. And I think that's more to establish their greatness more than because if they leave a franchise and the franchise is still okay, then it's like, well, they're pretty good, but they're not that great, and that franchise really isn't anywhere near what it used to be. So that proves to me that LeBron was, of course, a large piece, but it just helps reaffirm that in my head. I already knew that, but so they don't talk in the local hour anymore. It's just the four regular guys. Like Dan and Stugatz supposedly are there. They say, I don't even believe they show up until the national show. Some days they do. They come in for the last segment, and they, even before the extension, Dan wasn't showing up, and then it was wake and take with Stugatz. But Stugatz is like, I'm assuming Stugatz went, well, if Dan doesn't have to show up till this time, I don't want to show up to this time. And there's a whole backstory probably that goes with that, because Dan didn't want to. They were in drive time before, and then they moved when Colin Cowherd went to Fox, because he left and went to the Fox Sports Network, and then he had his radio show. I think it's on iHeartRadio or something like that. I don't know, but it's on something else. It's not on ESPN anymore. And so they had to take over Colin's slot, which was 9 to noon. And Dan doesn't like getting up, apparently, and he also doesn't like doing the local hour. If I was Miami, I'd be pissed, because this guy claims to love Miami, but he never does. He rarely does the Miami show, the Miami hour. Like, he shows up for guests and stuff. If they have like David Sampson on, oh, then he's going to interview David Sampson. It's like, well, you're willing to not do your job most of the local hours so those guys can get. I'm assuming it's also a twofold thing where he doesn't have to show up early, which he likes, and then it gives experience to the four other guys there to kind of drive everything. And because if Dan retires and they want to have careers in radio, this gives them some reps, to use a sports term. But at the end of the day, he shows up for the interviews, he shows up for this, he shows up for that. And for me, if I was one of those guys, I'd be like, well, okay, so you trust us to not do your job when it's not that important, but when there's something important, then you have to show up. Like, is that contingent? And maybe it's contingent on the guest being there or whatever. But I think, I don't know. And then they have journalists come in, and people come in on the local hour, like Izzy and Jason Leisure, and people from Miami who are in Miami, and then they talk, and that's a little bit better, because those guys are more comfortable in radio. The Refugees guys are kind of comfortable. Mike Ryan's not too bad, but he's not my favorite. And then the rest of them are not great. They're not the best at radio. They're okay, but I just don't feel like they're comfortable running the show. They're comfortable being players in the show and saying funny things and contributing here, contributing there. But to ask them to be to tote the rock, or to score the most points, to be the main focus of the show, I don't think they're ready for that. And then they're not much older than I am, so that's understandable. But so the Miami local hour has gone completely away, pretty much. I mean, I still download it and I still listen to it before the morning. But, on Tuesdays it's better. Greg Cody somehow shows up on time, and he's there for the local hour, but, the other two guys aren't. I don't understand that, but he... those guys are, at least every once in a while there's something. So it's whatever. And they still talk about stuff in the national show that was in the local hour. So whatever, I guess I can listen to it. But then you get to the national show, and these guys aren't, like I said, they just run bits into the ground. And they're like, what it reminds me of is I've heard other comedians, and people in comedy talk about comedians who just had the same act over and over again for 20, 30 years, and they never change their act. And that's what these guys do. Like, they find a funny bit that's new, and because their act is so stale at this point, like, they're not really doing anything different, they're not reinventing the wheel, and they're stale, they find this new bit, and they're like, oh my God, I gotta run with this, and then they just run with it, but they carry it too far, and then it just becomes annoying, it's just annoying. And like, I'll give you an example. This was a bit that they've abandoned because they got in trouble. But they really were mad about what happened with the Miami Marlins. And for those of you who don't know, they were sold to Derek Jeter, and they stripped pretty much everybody on the team who was worth anything and was paid anything to get to get a shittier team that they had to pay less money for, and trot a franchise out there to make money, basically, that they could make money on. And they were told, they sold it as they weren't going to do that, and then that's exactly what they did. And he said that if MLB said that they didn't know, Dan Lebatard said if they didn't know, because he's a really good journalist. I mean, I'll give him credit. He's a really good journalist. That's why I like him. It's because he's thoughtful. He was a writer. Those kind of people are great, but he's not following his journalistic instincts anymore because TV pays more. And so he can just fuck around and dick the dog and not do really much of anything. And he can sit around and not do anything. And in comparison, because journalism and investigative journalism takes a lot more work than showing up at 8:30 or whenever he shows up on Monday through Friday and sit there and talk for 3 hours and then go home. You don't have to chase down sources. You don't have to call multiple people. You don't have to corroborate stories. You don't have to fact check. You don't have to do anything. You just sit there and spout off at the mouth, basically what I'm doing. But no one's paying me, and I'm sitting at my house with a computer and a microphone, and I'm just talking, and he's really good at what he did, and then he stopped doing it. But now when the Miami Marlin thing came up, he got incensed, passionate, and went right back into it, which was impressive. I mean, he's impressive when he's like that. And it was really good segments. It spawned great content. But the passion that he has for the show isn't about sports. It isn't about, I don't really know what it's about, but it's not what it used to be. And granted, this could be because I thought about this too, because I watched all those other shows, and then I would come there and it would seem fresh, it would seem different. And maybe now, because that's about the only thing I still watch, that I'm saying they're in decline, and I'm saying they're bad because I don't have the other things where it's like, okay, I need a break from this, let's go over here. Oh, okay, that's cool. Now let's go back over here. Oh, okay, that's cool. Let's go. I'm not measuring my expectations, because they talk about how they like to underpromise and overdeliver. Well, they don't promise anything, and they don't really deliver anything. They had a segment at Tim Legler's house, but they had promised us, they had mentioned that they should all go there for Halloween, and they did it 9 days before Halloween, and it was just two guys. It was Guillermo and this producer Lorenzo, who's from Washington. They said it should be all of them, but then they didn't do, and I don't know, it just, to me, it doesn't make sense, And so to get back to the Marlins thing, then they bring on the commissioner of baseball, and they just ripped him a new a-hole. I mean, he was drilling him. It was cross-examination, bang, 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 bang. And it was impressive, and it was great radio. I mean, it was great fucking radio. The baseball bitched about it to ESPN, and then ESPN, I assume, bitched them out, and now they're probably on, super secret probation. And maybe that's why their content stinks so badly. But they kicked the shit out of that guy. And that was great. I mean, it was great radio. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was great because he felt that he screwed over the franchise. The information that was coming out, even in the national media, was that they screwed over the city. The franchise screwed over the city, and so and MLB knew about it, and then everybody was claiming, oh no, everybody involved, the franchise, the commissioners, oh no, that's not what happened, and then everything that was coming out in the national media was like, yeah, that's exactly what happened, and they knew about it, and he's like, this is bullshit, and so he brings him on, and he just goes after him. I don't know why he doesn't have that all the time, and then he does these things like he did with Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose, when I taped my podcast last week, had scored 50 points. I was happy for Derrick Rose. He's had massive amounts of injuries. He's gone through medical hell as far as a basketball player. And he hasn't been able to stay healthy and be the Derrick Rose that we thought he was going to be as basketball fans when he won the MVP in 2011. He scores 50 points. The next morning, he's on there talking about how should women feel about Derrick Rose being lauded because he has a sex charge. He was accused of sexual assault. It's like he had a court case that was adjudicated and he was found not guilty. He had a civil case where the burden of proof is far less than a court case, and he was found not to be liable for that either. It's being appealed, but I mean, I think if that woman doesn't get it the third time on appeal, I think that's 3 strikes, you're out. And instead of, the guy was crying on TV, Derrick Rose was, because he was emotional about it, and instead of thinking about him and, using it as a sports story or like a redemptive story for a guy who came through an accusation like that, came through, multiple injuries, came through a big fucking headache. I mean, he left 2 separate teams. He left the Knicks in the middle of the season. He left the fucking Cavs the year before in the middle of the season. And instead of talking about any of that, he goes, well, how should women feel about Derrick Rose being lauded today? And it's like, okay, you want to make a segment about that? Fine. But don't sit there and opine about how women should feel as a man. He has Sarah Spain, who is an ESPN personality. He's had Jamel Hill on the show. They have Mina Kimes on a fairly regular basis. All of these people. Jamel Hill's an ex-ESPN personality, but those are at least 3 women that I know that he's had on his show on a fairly consistent basis. They have a woman who works there, Allison Turner, who isn't, I don't know if she pays that close attention that she know or care about Derrick Rose, but she's a woman. Ask a fucking woman, you dipshits. Stop fucking having Dan sit there and opine about what the fuck women might feel and how they might feel and what kind of conversation. Fuck you. Fucking ask a woman. You have multiple women on speed dial. Call them and fucking ask them. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's not hard. It's not hard production. You just call a woman up and you say, hey, if Dan comes in and he says, I'd like to talk about this. And you say, well, why don't we do it this way? Because if you're talking about how women should feel, so then we got this fat guy sitting there talking about how women should feel. Really? Really? Rather than call one of the women that you include on your show and include them in the conversation, let's just exclude them and let's have you surmise how they might feel or openly question how they might feel. It's just fucking bullshit. It's just like to have that question, to have that as a topic in the first place, just to I don't know, gain listeners or lose listeners or cause controversy or whatever the fuck he's trying to do to try to be on the edge, because that's what he always talks about, being on the edge, and he wants to be on the edge. Well, be on the edge of what? Being on the edge of being an asshole? Because there was no need for that conversation that way. You really want to have the conversation? Call a woman. Ask him. Now this could be wrong, but I seem to remember Sarah Spain had fairly strong comments about Derrick Rose. Mina Kimes mostly focuses on football, but she's a woman. Jamel Hill got in trouble because of the stuff that she said when she was on ESPN. So if nothing else, whether she has a pro or a con opinion about Derrick Rose, she's going to have something to say. It's asinine. It's absolutely asinine to me. And after that happened, I've really, I still watch the show, I still listen to the show, but I've really, it showed me the precipitous decline since they signed the extension. I mean, Dan's now getting married, and Stugatz is, more interested on being on more television shows where he gets money and all this other stuff to be on TV because he wants to further his career and everything else. I mean, if you told me right now that in 2 years that show wouldn't exist, well, what did they sign, a 4-year extension? If you told me at the end of this extension that it would be done, because Dan now, he turned his, when he signed the extension, now he's doing an interview show. They're giving an interview show to a guy who, when they interviewed Benicio del Toro when the newest Sicario movie came out, I think the first question he asked him was basically, now this isn't exactly, you can look it up, they probably have it somewhere, but basically the nuts and bolts of the question was, so you're friends with Johnny Depp. I hear he's dying of alcoholism. Thoughts? What the fuck are you talking about? That's the first question. I mean, if you want to know that stuff, great. Know that. That's great to wonder. That's really not a bad thing to wonder. It's not a bad thing to, if you like Johnny Depp and you want to know about what's going on with Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro is his friend, so let's ask him. But let's not butter him up. Let's not be friendly. Let's just come out right out of the gate and ask him, hey, your friend Johnny Depp, alcoholism's killing him, right? It's just, and they're going to give that guy an interview show. Well, I certainly hope he interviews football people better than, or sports people better than, I hope if I'm Derrick Rose's fucking press agent and that guy calls, I'm never letting you interview Derrick Rose, ever. After what he did the other day, that would never happen. And he's friends with Ricky Williams, and I think he was there with Ricky Williams in one of his first interviews, is what he said on his show. So, I mean, okay, so that's a layup. You're with Ricky Williams, you know, and that's a story that you like to tell. But I have very little to no faith that show is what it used to be, and it's proven every single day. Lackadaisical effort. I mean, you know, and it's really funny because it's in the sports context, and in the sports context, they are exactly like every fucking contract year player. Every fucking contract year player. I mean, I think the Miami Marlins thing was right before the contract, which you would think would be a bad idea, but I guarantee you it drove up listenership. Because I fucking tuned in all the time about that. I don't remember if it was after or during. I don't think it was during the season. I think it was right before, and I think they signed the extension in like May. I wouldn't quote me on that, but it wasn't that long ago, but it wasn't, you know, that recent either. And they did it. They did like everybody else, and just contract year, let's do something really good to show them we still got it, and then get the contract, and not a fucking thing after that. Let's find funny bits and run them into the ground, and occasionally do stuff that, you know, reminds people, hey, we can still, you know, we can be Dwayne Wade. I mean, they are Dwayne Wade with the Heat. He can still do a few things, but he's not really interested in staying in shape, and defense isn't his thing anymore. And he just wants to score the ball, run around, and just, you know, go out there and just be Dwayne Wade. And they just want to be their show, you know, because they're the biggest show in radio now. I'm really sad. I mean, out of everything, I think the main emotion I feel is sadness. I'm not even that mad. I mean, I'm not happy about it, because I hate, like, when I get upset, when I feel disappointment, my immediate reaction is fuck them. So they like to talk about how they overpromise and underdeliver, and they're not promising me. At this point, I don't hear anything they say, and they don't deliver on anything anyway, so what the fuck's the difference? And that's funny that's one of the things that they like to say. We overpromise or underpromise and overdeliver. And they also call themselves a marching band to nowhere because they can't ever get anything accomplished. Seems like a bit of an oxymoron there, but I don't know. I really wish that the show, maybe it's me. Maybe I have too high of expectations for them, and I'm putting too much on them and everything else. But it just seems like ever since that extension, it's just been like a fucking mountain, you know, a cliff dive of fucking decline. I mean, just straight fucking down. But I don't know. A lot of people around here don't like that fucking show anyway. So maybe I'm embracing my sensibilities of my area. Who the fuck knows? I don't know. I just, like I said, my cousin suggested that I kind of review people that I like, and I like them. At least I used to. I still watch their show. I won't. You can't. I'm going to bitch about it because I think it should be better, and I'm going to hope that it gets better. But eventually, I'm not going to watch anymore. You know, the same thing happened with PTI. I used to watch PTI when I was a kid every single day. I still listen to Tony Kornheiser's podcast, but I want nothing to do with Mike Wilbon. I think he's trying to be like Stephen A. Smith, but he doesn't have whatever Stephen A. Smith has. And the other thing is I didn't really ever take Stephen A. Smith as a serious journalist. I mean, I know he had that show on TV for a while that was fairly serious journalism, and he used to show up for Jim Rome's Burning and stuff like that. But I kind of, his whole oeuvre is the First Take Stephen A. Smith. And Mike Wilbon's trying to like get in on that, business. But Mike Wilbon, I saw as a serious journalist because he used to be one. Now I don't see him as that. Now I see him as a guy who's more interested in being Michael Wilbon and being famous. And I'm, resting on his laurels and being like, I did this, young man. You shut the hell up. I don't have to listen to you. That kind of shit. And I'm not here for that. I'm just not here for that. And I I still listen to Kornheiser's podcast because you can say whatever you want. He's been a cranky old guy for the entire time I've ever seen him, and he's not as well informed anymore as he used to be because there's some things that slip past his grasp. But his podcast is better than the national show than PTI because he focuses a lot on Washington sports, and he lives there and he cares about them, so that's good. I'd rather he do something he's passionate about because he gets really upset about stuff, and I want people to be passionate. And I don't buy Michael Wilbon's passion for 1 second. I think it's all fucking, it's all doctored bullshit that he just does for television purposes. So, I don't know. I guess that was a long segment about nothing, but my cousin suggested that, and then I've been feeling this way about the Dan Lebatard Show ever since they signed the extension, so I figured I should say something, and I'm, like I said, if you tell me at the end of their extension that the show's over, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it's over in 2 years. Stugotz decides to leave, he's gotten out to go somewhere else, and Dan just, pivots away to completely TV because he doesn't want to do radio at that time frame anymore, and that's it. Because they don't do the local hour anymore, and to me, that's the biggest indicator that they don't give a shit about the show, because the local hour was the thing that they did for Miami, and he doesn't even care about that anymore, it seems like. That's my personal opinion. That may not be the case, but that's how I feel about it. And I would if I lived in Miami, I would if I lived anywhere, And I do. I live somewhere else, and I feel that way. So we're going to transition away from ESPN and sports topics. I'm going to talk about the UFC before we end, but I live in Wisconsin, and we had elections yesterday. Everybody did, but we had a big, massive sea change, and we were part of this blue wave we heard was coming. Scott Walker, for those of you who don't know, was the governor of Wisconsin for quite a while. He was shortly run out. He was run out for president, and then shortly run out as not to be president. He really, as a politician, I'm not political in the sense like I'm Republican or Democrat. I really honestly don't care because they both lie all the time, and everything you fuckers say is bullshit. So I'm not voting for either one of you. I'll vote for like myself instead, if I do choose to vote. And they have now voted in Tony Evers, who was the Secretary of Education or some state secretary of education or some fucking thing like that. My mother works in the public school systems in Wisconsin, and she, said, well, he's a good, she said he's a really smart man, but you wouldn't know it by his thing. And he's must have had one of the worst campaigns I've ever seen. His ads were terrible. I don't know what the fuck he stood for. I mean, and it was bad. It was bad. And Scott Walker was everywhere. I mean, Scott Walker was fucking everywhere. Everywhere I looked, there was Scott Walker this, Scott Walker that. Even worse than him, I think it was the Senate was versus Tammy Baldwin and Leah Vukmir, and she was fucking I have a phone that has a freestyle game on it, and I had fucking those ads on my phone. On that fucking little stupid freestyle game. I was like, you have to be fucking... Why the fuck do I want to... But I'm not talking about this because I really give a shit who won or who lost. I'm asking it... I'm talking about it more as like a sociological thing or maybe like a psychological thing, because both politicians, like everybody, Scott Walker said he was going to because he took a lot of funding away from the public schools. He broke the unions of the public schools, so the teachers couldn't unionize, and he was a union buster and all this other stuff. And there was talk that he was going to refund the schools, and everybody thought he was full of shit because he was just trying to do that to get people to vote for him who liked education. And Tony Evers, obviously, being some kind of secretary of education in the state or whatever the fuck it is, he obviously is going to do something about education. And being a Democrat, he's probably going to do... I mean, they had Jim Doyle here for a long time, and he did a lot of stuff. Like, he gave a lot of money to the schools. Problem is that the schools really kind of thought that was how it was always going to be. But that's a different story. But I wonder, because he said he's going to put a bunch of money in the schools. He's going to fix the roads. He's going to fix healthcare stuff about pre-existing conditions. What the fuck else was the other thing he said? and he's going to lower taxes on the middle class. That was one of the ads that I saw. He said he was going to put like $1 billion back into to public education. He was going to lower taxes for the middle class, and he was going to fight for health care, some fucking thing. I don't really remember because I try not to watch those commercials because they make me want to shoot myself. But what happens if he doesn't do this, right? He's supposed to be the new guy. He's supposed to be all this. We're supposed to have all this hope that he's going to do all these new things if you voted Democrat. And if you voted Democrat and he doesn't do those things, then you're going to vote Republican the next time, right? Well, that Republican's going to come in and do whatever he wants. Probably not with... Whoop. I'm going to drop the fucking microphone. Probably not what you want, right? And it boggles my mind. How are you so easily fooled? You know, because these people aren't possible. I mean, everybody likes Obama that, you know, is of a certain age. Not everybody, but a lot of people like Obama. I heard I was watching this show called The Circus, which whatever you think about the show, if you know about it, it's informative, if nothing else. It might be a little biased, but for me, the Republican comes on, I yell at the Republican. The Democrat comes on, I yell at the Democrat. So I don't really care either way. I hate everybody because they're all lying bastards as far as I'm concerned. And nobody gives a shit, and they just do whatever they want. And the prime example of this is Obama, because in that show, he was introduced by the guy who was running for governor of Florida, Andrew Gillum, and he said, "Our forever president." And everybody's like, oh, he was saying... Obviously, he was in the insurance company's fucking pocket. Look at what he did with Obamacare. Now, maybe he gave, you know, some sort of universal health care, but it's fucking terrible. It's not that good. And the insurance companies are the ones that are fucking raking in shit tons of money because of it. And I hate fucking insurance in the first place. All kinds of insurance. This idea that we have to have insurance is bullshit. Okay? That part bothers me because freedom of choice is something that I want. If I choose to have insurance, fine. And you know what? If it was up to me, you could make a fucking law that says if you don't have insurance and you get sick, I don't have to pay for you to get better. Fuck off. You die now. You made that choice. And I'm fully okay with that. Because if my choices lead to me having a problem that I'm ultimately going to expire from, fuck it. That's the choice that I made. I don't expect you to be responsible for it. But see, everybody wants everybody to be responsible in times like that. And then they're like, well, I'm dying. I have cancer and I didn't go to the doctor for the last 35 fucking years. And now you got to help me. Well, no, it's a little too late now because your treatment's going to be like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, the healthcare cost in this country is ridiculous in the first place. But the point being is that if it costs that much money to get better, well, I'd rather just die in the first place because you're never going to get out of that debt. You might as well go to debtor's prison and just fucking break rocks for the rest of your life. But that's all a big aside to say Obama is seen as this wonderkind president in comparison to Trump, and in comparison to Trump, you know, and some of the things that he says and the way that he conducts certain business. Yeah, sure, he's not as bad, but as far as the backdoor dealings, I mean, there's every president, you can look at what happened pretty much, and you can see something that happened that they did that helped some certain group of people. You know, the Bush tax cuts, stuff like that. The tax cuts that Trump got. The tax cuts that Trump put through. That all helps only a certain group of people. And this Obamacare thing, which was this big deal, helped the insurance companies a lot. They make a shit ton of money. It hurt small businesses and helped insurance companies. That's what it did. That is the statistics. You can argue with me all you want, but that's the fact. Now it's better in certain ways, and it's worse in others. And I'm not here to say that it was good, you know. I'm just saying, if you look at it that way, the insurance companies fucked us. They fucked me, especially. A younger man who doesn't really need insurance, and then by the time I run out of insurance coverage ability by my parents, then I have to fucking find insurance or I have to pay money. Fuck you. Fuck you. I shouldn't have to find insurance if I don't want fucking insurance, you sons of bitches. Don't fucking tell me what to do. If I get fucking cancer, if I get a heart attack, if I get hit by a fucking bus and I don't have enough money to pay for it, then fucking just let me die. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. I would rather do that than pay for insurance. But this, to be fair, I wouldn't pay homeowners insurance. I wouldn't pay rental insurance. I wouldn't pay auto insurance. I wouldn't pay a fucking bit of insurance if I had a choice. I think insurance is a fucking scam. It's a fucking scam, okay? I hate insurance, so I'm not going to get started on that because I hate that whole fucking idea. But the point is that Tony Evers came now and he's talking about putting money in the schools and doing this and fixing the road. Like there was a bunch of stuff that they were talking, because each website I looked at, I was up pretty late last night and I was looking at what was going on, and they were like, yeah, he promised this and he did this, blah, blah, blah. And so if he does, like, if it was me and I ruled the world, I've said this before, I would have them have to have a checklist. They would have to, whatever they want to, they would have to pick 4 or 5 things. And they would have to go on the checklist. And then on the checklist, you would have to have, you'd have to mark off those things. And then that would determine whether or not you got to run for re-election. That's what I would say. Now, maybe you could have long-term checklist and a short-term checklist. So then, okay, in the short term, we want to do these 2 things, and then we want to do these 3 things over the next one. But you have to show significant progress in the first, in the first 4 years or however long you're there to get a shot at doing more. Because if you're just fucking around, then fuck off, go away. I need somebody who's effective, I just think it's so funny that, everybody's excited about this guy, and maybe he'll be better. He can't, some people think he can't be much worse. But we're at a point where the country and, there needs to be some accountability somewhere. And I am so tired of everybody, I voted. Yeah, you voted for a guy who lied to you. I can almost guarantee it. But she get loose? I don't think so. Okay. Okay. But, you probably voted for a guy who lied to you. And if you did, then, what's the point? I don't know. I hope it makes the state better. I hope he does some of the things he said. But if he doesn't, then they'll vote Republican and the cycle will continue. I don't know how many of you that listen to this are dog owners, but I just got a couple of puppies. That's why the podcast is going to sound a little funny, because I hit a huge break because I hear barking outside, and I was like, what's going on out there? I thought they got tangled up or something. Here, they're just monkeying with each other. I got 2 puppies recently, and I just don't know. I thought it was a good idea, and I thought I would like it and all that other stuff. And at first I did, and this is a super self-centered, fucked up thing to talk about, but honestly, I look at the dogs and I just see my mortality. And it makes me deathly afraid of having kids. And as ridiculous as that sounds, I mean, that's literally where I am, because, I'm watching them. They've gone from, the size of my hand to my wrist, and now they're as big as my arm, and they're getting bigger every day and causing more trouble. And I had one issue with one where she ate something weird and threw up and had, saliva coming out of her fucking mouth and just giant streams to the point it was hitting the floor, and it looked like some disgusting fountain. And she was sitting there and had done, came out both ends, and she's sitting there after she threw up for like the 5th time, and she's looking at me with them big eyes like, for Christ's sake, help me. And when I told my mom, I said, other than bleeding from her eyeballs, she was pretty much telling me, hey man, there's something going on here, I need help. And, $85 later, she's just fine. And the doctor's like, yeah, I think she just ate something funny. And I just, the other night, I don't know if this is what happens, but it creeps me the fuck out, because my grandmother, when I was younger, I think I was probably like 8, she had cataract surgery. And at that time, they let you watch it, I think on TV or in like some room or something in the hospital. I don't remember exactly the details, but my mom said, don't watch it. Well, I'm one of those people, you tell me not to do something, fuck you, I'll do it anyway. Well, I watched it, and I watched them take that. Oh, my God. And it just, anything with eyeballs had traumatized the living shit out of me. I went and hid in the bathroom after that. And the other night, we got this kennel, and they have like those little hooks to give a divider, and they're still small enough that they can fit in there. And the one dog, the same one that threw up, walked past there and somehow hooked her eye on one of those little shepherd hooky kind of things that hook onto the other side, because they can't hook onto both sides because the other side is where the door is. And she got it caught, and I could have sworn, I was across the room from her, and I could have sworn, and all of a sudden you hear, yipe, 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 and I looked, and I thought her eyeball, her eyelid kind of area was being pulled away, and she got unhooked, but Jesus Christ. And then I just had this, and it traumatized me from that, traumatized me from remembering the trauma from before, and just ever since then, these dogs, I like them. You can probably hear them barking outside. I like them, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could have kids because I can't handle the dogs getting older. Because all I think, it's a self-centered fucking thing, but all I think about is myself. I think about myself aging, and, that at one point I was those puppies. I was those little puppies running around with all the piss and vinegar and, chewing and fighting and fun, and then, at a certain point, they're going to be old and gray and decrepit, and that'll be, I'll be almost 40 by that time, and then, or maybe sooner, given the fact that they're, constantly in trouble. And it's like, Jesus Christ, I just don't know if I can handle it. And then you think about having kids. These dogs make me think about this, right? The fucking kids are going to be here when I'm dead. So then I'm going to be like, okay, at some point I'm going to die and you're barely going to be started. You're going to be at the situation that I'm in, probably, given my family history and my general lack of interest in being alive sometimes. And it's just like, I thought they were a good idea, but I like them and all, and, it's just, I don't know, it's been fucking with my head for quite a while. And I wonder, because I've talked about depression and stuff like that on the podcast, and I wonder, and this time of year is really bad, with the daylight savings going away and everything's dark by like 5 o'clock, but I wonder, does anybody else think like this? Is it just me? Am I fucking that fucked up that it's just me that sees the puppies and thinks, oh Christ, there is a legitimate sands through the hourglass kind of situation, except they're a fucking 4-legged version, and then sees having kids as doing the same thing to a degree. Different, probably worse, and exacerbates it faster. And maybe I focus on the wrong things and all that shit. I've heard all that crap before. But I just wonder, does anybody else think like that? Like, has anybody that listens to this or has any interaction with it, do you have, like, and I don't need you to say, yeah, I thought about it once. No, I'm talking about have this as a consistent theme throughout your life. Like, is there anybody out there? Is there anybody out there that has that? Or is it just me? Am I that fucking out in left field? I don't know. It's I'm going to stop talking about it because it's going to depress the fucking shit out of me. But it is what it is. Well, let's move on to a different subject. UFC 230 was last weekend, and I got to watch the prelims on FS1. And they were pretty good. Interesting fights. Not too bad. I know Jason Knight fought, and at the end he was the main guy, but I don't remember anybody else because Saturday might have been a month ago as far as how much shit I've done in the last couple of days. But I do remember the main card. That last stylebender, Israel Adesanya or whatever the fuck, I don't know how to say his name, and he's been around a couple of times, but he's new, and he's got one of them weird names, because everybody's got to have weird names like Khabib Nurmagomedov, blah, 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 and that equanimous guy from the Packers, and everybody's got to have names that, I like to pronounce things correctly, but these guys got fucking names that I'm like, oh, fuck this shit. And that guy's good. I mean, that Israel, last style bender, that's what I'm fucking calling him because that's the nickname for him. And that guy's fucking good. Now, he hasn't faced the tippy top of the division yet. So we might, we as fans might find out that he's got a little hitch in his giddy up. But as far as like maybe a wrestler that's real good or a jiu-jitsu guy who's real good, because his striking is fucking phenomenal. I mean, he kicks the living shit. And I think Derek Brunson was pissed and went in there with a point to prove, like, I can fuck you up on the feet. And he's hard to take down. I mean, I think the first time I saw him was against that Wilkinson guy, who is a bona fide wrestler and just kept trying to take him down, and he just fucked him up. And he beat up Brad Tavares, but I don't really remember him trying to take him down. And from what I heard, I didn't buy the card. I never buy cards because I don't have that kind of money. I just watch the stuff afterwards that comes out. Anybody who thought that Daniel Cormier was going to lose to Derek Lewis is kind of foolish. The only way is, like, if you've ever played the UFC fighting games, when you get a flash KO and the guy, like, you just punch a guy and he'd go down, and it's like, oh fuck, yeah, that's how that was gonna go, because there's no other way that he was gonna lose. I mean, there was no other way he was gonna lose. He just wasn't gonna lose. Derek Lewis wasn't gonna out wrestle him. Derek Lewis wasn't gonna outwork him or anything else. I mean, he's just not. Derek Lewis supposedly barely trains, which you might not believe it, but I tend to believe he doesn't work as hard as other guys, because he's his own dude, and I give him credit. It works for him, so go do it. But Daniel Cormier as a wrestler is a fucking monster. He has been for a long time, so to see him win that way is not surprising. The Chris Weidman Jacare fight. I think Chris Weidman winning against Anderson Silva is probably the worst thing that could have happened to him. I wish somebody else would have beat him, and then Chris Weidman could have beaten them. Like Rockhold had beaten him, and then he had beaten Rockhold, or Bisping had beaten him, and he could have beat Bisping or something like that, because he beat Silva when Silva was Silva, before all the testing and all that bullshit, and he kept getting in trouble. And there are these expectations when he fights, and I don't think he's exactly that guy. He's a good fighter, don't get me wrong. He's a high level fighter, but I don't think he's like the top of the top, elite, boom, best guy. And I just don't feel that way. I never have. He's got all the skills and stuff, but he just isn't that guy. Rockhold's more that guy. Jacare's closer to that guy. The two guys who are fighting for the title, like Robert Whittaker, I never would have thought he was. Gastelum, I don't think is at all. I just think he's a short little fat dude who can't make 170. And maybe I'm wrong. He is he's good, but I just don't see him as elite. I think the guys that are elite keep getting hurt, like Rockhold got hurt against David Branch, and or against Weidman. I think he was fighting Weidman, and then Jacare stepped up, or was it the other way around? I don't remember. Yeah, because it was Branch versus Jacare, and then it was Weidman versus Rockhold. And I think had Rockhold stayed healthy, if he could beat Rockhold, then or had beaten Jacare or something like that. He just the top of he lost to Yoel Romero, and that guy's the top of the top. Now, granted, it was a thing, but I don't know. I just never saw Chris Weidman as the elite dude. I see him as like top 7 guy, and that's pretty good, especially in 185 because there's a lot of dudes. But yeah, and I'm not, like I said, Whittaker I like. I don't necessarily see him as the best of the best either. Rockhold's my guy. I like Rockhold a lot, but there's something there too with him. Like athletically, he's got it. Mentally, maybe not as much. I think he's more concerned about other things. I don't know. I like him, and I like Rockhold. I like Jacare. I'll be interested to see what happens because he's got to fight one of those guys. And that Asden Saya guy, he's coming. He's coming for people. And if there's a guy that's elite, if he faces like the next step up guy, like one of the top 4 or 5 guys and a wrestler, like a guy who can take people down and fuck them up on the ground, if he faces a guy like that and that guy cannot get him down, because his striking is fucking great. I mean, it is just it's like Uriah Hall. If Uriah Hall had consistent effort, like Uriah Hall can really fuck people up on the feet, but he doesn't consistently do what he's supposed to. And that last stylebender dude fucks people up every time. He goes and he knows to wait and he knows what to do. Like standing up, he knows exactly what to do. And you see him. He's going through it all in his brain at the moment, and it's pretty impressive. I'm pretty impressed with him. And David Branch facing that Jaron, I don't know what the fuck that guy's, Jared, I think, who came down from 205. He looked pretty good. He was impressed with himself. He was running out without his shirt on because of his body transformation. If I fucking changed that much, that'd be great. I'd like that to happen, so maybe we can figure out what he did. But David Branch losing, that's disappointing. But because I like David Branch. I think he's interesting. I think he's kind of funny. I like the way he fights. I watched him in World Series of Fighting. I kind of like the guy, but certain moments he just gives it up, and other moments he's there, you know. And he did that against Rockhold, and then he did it against this guy. And I'd like to see him get up there because I just think he's he's somebody that I'd like to see do well. But overall, my feeling was just sadness because I think it was either that night or the night after that they posted the events for 2019, and for the first 3 months, I think there's 2 events on ESPN, like actually on ESPN. And I'm pissed. I fucking hate that bullshit. I'm gonna put UFC on ESPN Plus. If I was a fucking UFC, I'm like, okay, so you're gonna take us off of regular TV and put us on streaming because we're less valuable? Streaming isn't fucking valuable. It's not. I'm not going to talk about this again because I went in hard on this on one of my episodes, but the fact that if I'm UFC, I'd feel disrespected. I'd feel fucking disrespected. And if they don't, I feel bad for them because they just saw the money. We'll give you lots of money to put you on ESPN Plus, which is barely started. Fucking assholes. I'm not gonna know as much about UFC. I'm not gonna watch as much. I'm not gonna I'll listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. He'll talk about UFC. That's about the only fucking way I'm gonna know what's going on because I'm not gonna fucking pay attention as closely. Because fuck you. Why should I? You took it away from me. I'll probably pay more attention to Bellator, except that's on DAZN, so then I'm gonna be pissed about that. So then MMA will just be like, I like fighters and never watch them. Ever. I won't even, everything will be the clips that happen afterwards. Fuck you, you fucking cocksuckers. Take that fucking thing and shove it up your ass. I hate fucking ESPN. I hate ESPN Plus. The only show on there that I fucking watch is the Dan Lebatard Show, and I spent the first segment of this bitching about how much I don't like them anymore. So, how disappointed I am in them, because I still watch the show, so I can't necessarily say I don't like them if I'm watching the fucking thing. So, but it was a decent card. Went pretty much the way everybody expected, minus probably the David Branch fight. There might have been some other fights that I'm missing, but those are the ones that stick out in my memory. So, and that Stylebender dude, I don't think he's gonna lose. So, yeah. Anybody betting against him, probably a bad bet. Now we'll see who they put him against next. And this goes back to the Anthony Smith discussion I had last week. You need to build him properly and do things the right way. Don't fucking rush him. They're doing it smart so far, but you never know. They get too excited about shit. I think that's Dana that gets excited like that. But it is what it is. Anyway, I'm going to finish this week with what I titled the movie of the week. And in the second week, I'm going to do a TV show. I said it might be a TV show. So entertainment, viewable entertainment of the week. We'll call it that. I didn't watch the 4th season, apparently, of Ray Donovan. I must have watched the first episode and then never saw the rest. I saw the 5th season last year, and then I got Showtime again so I could watch the 6th season. That is one of the best fucking shows I have ever seen in my whole life. And you may not agree, but I love that fucking, oh my God, that fucking show. I swear to God, if I could have that guy, well, some parts of that guy's life, not the whole thing, because some of that stuff's pretty fucked up. But, like, I mean, he is just, that character, and Liv Schreiber is that fucking character. Jesus Christ. He's fucking great. He does a great job. If you have not seen Ray Donovan, first of all, I'm not going to tell. Ray Donovan's basically a fixer in Hollywood. The first couple of seasons, there's a fairly central way that he fixes things, and then the last few years, it's been a little more fragmented. Jon Voight's in it as his dad. His dad's a complete fuck up. He's got a brother. I think that's Terry, who's got Parkinson's, and they're all from Boston, and they talk like that. Throughout most of the show, even though they're in Los Angeles, so everybody else talks like they're in Los Angeles, and these guys are talking from Boston. And Terry's got Parkinson's, used to be a fighter. It's based around boxing and stuff. I love that part. The boxing part gets me. Like, it's like a Boston version of I don't know what. Not even Rocky, because this is too dark for Rocky. But he's got another brother, Bunchy, who's a little slow. And, I mean, he's got a good heart, and he's not as slow as everybody thinks, but he ain't that quick. And they got a half-brother who's black, and it's just an amazing show. I mean, the stuff that happens from the first season when they had James Woods on it, oh, God, it's a good show. I mean, Liev Schreiber, I think is how you say his name. I said Liv before, but it's Liev, because I think it's Liev. That guy can fucking act, and he's got a great voice. He's got a great voice. If you ever hear, like, Hard Knocks, that's him doing the voiceover, and his fucking voice is amazing. It's amazing. Jon Voight is really good. I don't like a lot of what Jon Voight's done. I've watched him in a few movies, like, of course, Deliverance. Everybody says that. But there's other movies I've seen him in. And I was like, he's okay. But I didn't get this fascination with Jon Voight. This fucking show, man. He's really good in this show. And the ancillary characters that they pick up from season to season, people they use for seasons and episodes and shit. I mean, this is the idea of, like, this is the pinnacle of television as far as I'm concerned right now. And everybody says that, so it's the hackiest fucking thing to say. But it is the pinnacle for TV, and I'm really impressed because I love TV. I love fucking watching TV, and this is one of the shows. I would pay for Showtime to watch this show. I did. I love this show. It's got Kidding on now, too. Shameless was on before. I like those shows, too, but Ray Donovan's so much better. So much better than those shows. They're different shows, too, but for me, I mean, if you watch the show, you'll get it. My fucking title of my podcast is The Enlightened Misanthrope. You watch fucking Ray Donovan, you get why I like that fucking show. It's dark. And it's dark, but it's family-oriented, and it's this and it's that, and it's like me. It's all over the fucking place. It never stays in one lane. But the general theme is darkness, you know, because there's always this undercurrent of darkness wherever he goes. He's a man who does what has to be done, and, oh, Jesus Christ. I'd love to tell you, I'd love to sit here and tell you, episode by episode, every season, I'll pull up the Wikipedia and be like, oh yeah, and then this happened, and I remember when I watched it, blah, blah. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to tell you, all those guys are in it. There's a guy that plays Terry, and he's in a lot of stuff. I don't know his fucking name. And Bunchy, it was a child actor guy. I saw him in a couple movies where he was, when he was younger, and he was in, like, there was one where he was in Juvie. I don't remember the character's name, but I've seen him in some stuff too. His wife, I don't remember if I've seen her before. Ray Donovan's wife is there. I don't know if I've seen her before. The guy from Scarface who works with Al Pacino works for Ray Donovan in this show. There's lots of people in this show. There's lots of people in this show. So I was gonna say movie because it's almost like a movie. It's like a movie every week, but it's a really long movie. It's like 10 episodes long or whatever. So I definitely recommend you go watch that if you have not seen it already. And if you have seen it, you should watch it again. The fourth season was especially good when he was helping out that boxer. And, oh, man, I thought I had seen it. And then I started watching. I'm like, and then my fucking DVR, I was so pissed. It taped like the first half of, like the first quarter of it, like previously on Ray Donovan. And it shows like what happened before. And then it starts playing the fucking opening for the show, and it goes to that fucking movie with Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker and Kathy Namji as fucking as witches on Freeform. I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? And then you can watch it, and it's like the whole fucking movie taped on that instead. I got some fucking problems with my deep head fucking hopper. Pisses me off. I was so mad. I was like, oh, come on. Now I don't know what fucking happened. I'm gonna have to buy fucking next year too so I can tape the fucking. And yeah, I hear everybody on there, hey man, if you got stars, you can go on Stars on Demand. I don't want to fucking waste my internet. I probably will because I have to, but I'm not going to want to. I got some, because I have HughesNet, and you get so much for all day, and then you get the extra time. And I've been trying to go to bed earlier, but I was up pretty late last night, so maybe I'll stay up tonight and hook up but I didn't hook up the DVR to it because it was fucking up the DVR, so I don't fucking know. Fuck it. I love that show. I just love that show, and I hate internet stuff because it drives me nuts. But I definitely recommend you should watch the show. I really do. I recommend you should tell Dan Lebatard to do better on his show, and I recommended you should watch Ray Donovan because that's a damn good TV show. Damn good TV show. I like it a lot, in case you can't tell. But yeah, I don't really have any more this week. It's kind of been a calm week, other than that. And then last week I taped too much. I over-taped it, and I couldn't export the file because it was too many megabytes, so then I had to cut it and then try to export it twice and then have my sound guy put it together, and it was a fucking mess. So I'm gonna try to make the episode shorter, for you and for me. I think part of the thing that scares people off is that it's 2 hours long, and you probably don't want to listen to me talk for 2 hours long. 2 hours. It's one of the saddest things is I listen to this in the car. I listen to it after I tape it, and I've always been somebody who likes talking to themselves, and I know that it used to make you think you're crazy. Maybe people think you were crazy, or I've read some studies where they say it's a sign of intelligence, and there's all any kind of thing you want to find now you can find proof for it. But I thoroughly enjoy my own podcast, so at least somebody's enjoying it, right? It's so sad to say out loud, but it's funny to me for really, really, really weird reasons, I guess. I don't even know what the reasons are, but it's just, I know it's fucking sad that I enjoy my own podcast, but the funniest part is that I think it's hilarious at the same time. So not only do I enjoy it, I also get to laugh at myself. So I don't know, maybe it's good for me. So I'm gonna cut her off here this week, and like I said in the beginning, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes. I don't know if we're ever gonna get on Google Play. I don't think so. We tried. If anybody knows of a way to do it that's easy, let me know, because I am not versed in this. But yeah, and Packers play the Dolphins this week, so that's probably a win. God, I only hope so. And I'm not really going to talk about the Patriot game because who cares? They lost to the Patriots. I mean, that was not to be unexpected. They lost to the Patriots. However, I will say they traded their fucking starting safety, and then they started Kentrell Bryce and Jermaine Whitehead, and I think Bryce is on the IR now, and Whitehead they cut because he slapped that guy in the helmet. So, yeah, you want to tell me how the fucking Clinton Dix isn't worth it. Whatever, probably could use him now. Kind of how I feel about it, but what do I know, right? Anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, until the next time, this is the Enlightened Misanthrope, and I hope you have a good week.